What's going on, guys? Take 2 of TGM, the Gang Minute, my Monday vlog, and also the vlog of the Geek Answer Network. And of course, as soon as I start again, the dog has to bark. The fun never ends. But, you know, life happens. But I had to restart because I had the dashboard up for Geeky Antics, and I forgot to turn it on pause, so I decided to play an ad. And that was rather annoying. It just completely ruined my flow. And I want to be a lot more focused today on the vlog. Because, you know, banter is cool, but I know sometimes people, they get turned off by the banter. So anywho, today we're going to talk about some behind-the-scenes stuff for a Timey-Wimey Tea Time. We're going to talk about your podcast strategy, What's your podcasting endgame? That's an article that's coming as part of the Gang Minute update on the site. And then we're going to talk about how to avoid anti-social media. Okay, that's the thing. A lot of people do social media, but they don't understand social media. I'm not saying I'm like 100% on point all the time. See, I know at least what not to do and what not to do. Of course, putting it into practice is a whole different thing. I mean, I am a certified social media specialist, a strategist, and I'm certified by the National Institute of Social Media, NISM for short. Doesn't mean I'm like the end all for the knowledge there, but you know, I feel like I know a thing or two, and everybody can share a different perspective. I think everybody has their own approach to things, and that's cool. Like for me, I could say I've been doing social media since the 90s, because if you really think about it, things like bulletin boards, even mainframe systems, but that's going way back. But bulletin boards, Usenet, you know, user groups, those were the beginnings of social media, because it was all about people contributing bits and pieces to the overall conversation and creating a collective. Of course, you didn't have the many-to-many conversations like you can now, because the internet just couldn't support that kind of thing. But that's besides the point. So let's talk about Timey-Wimey Tea Time behind the scenes, because I'm really excited about all the traction we've been getting with the show. And, you know, it's amazing how overwhelmingly positive everybody has been in the comments. I'm pretty sure some of the comments are spammers and bots just trying to get some of the link juice. And that's fine, you know. It's inevitable. The more popular something becomes, the more it's gonna happen. By the way, the little cute kitten you see there is Bloo. You know, we have an ongoing campaign for at least next several weeks, next 4 weeks, I would say, where I'm gonna be trying to raise money for her. She's not doing too well, and I'll be completely, you know, I've honest here and just as candid as possible, transparent as possible, whatever you want to say. But, you know, the money's really tight right now, and so, you know, I ain't too proud to beg. We could use some help, and we'll be doing some of the typical monetization stuff, you know, affiliate marketing, banners, and whatnot. But I don't want to do too much of that, because then it slows down the website, and there's issues with that too. So stay tuned for more details on that. We will be doing Amazon Associates. So if you normally shop through Amazon, you can use our referral link, and there'll be that. And we're also looking at other partners for affiliate marketing, like ThinkGeek, you know, or GoDaddy. We're gonna see what people like right now, and if you could go through our stuff, then that'd be great. It'll give us money, and you don't have to change your spending habits. But anyway, I don't want to make that about this, because I have a lot of stuff I want to talk about that I think people have been asking about. Now with Timey-Wimey Tea Time, TWTT for short, there's been a few people that have said things like, please don't record the pre-show, or do your testing before the show. And it just made me realize, just more than ever, just how much people do not understand how much work goes into podcasting, and even Twitch streaming, but podcasting even more so. Because in podcasting, all you have is the audio. Now, compare this to blogging. I love writing, and I would do a lot more blogging if I had the time, but I'm seeing it less and less valuable in terms of the time invested versus the results I get, you know, without grinding. Because if I really wanted to, I could go all out and really get some more awesome results. But it's just not worth it, because the problem with blogging is there's such a low barrier to entry that everyone is doing this. So when you say you're a blogger, it's kind of like, yeah, so is my mother. It's like, oh, what, you want a cookie? I wouldn't call myself a blogger. Not that I'm not proud of it, even though I've been doing it for a very long time. I would call myself a writer first, because I've done traditional writing, and I also do the blogging. Now, that's not to take away the credit from blogging. It's a very serious thing, and it's still going to be the direction of things to come, because I feel everyone that wants to get some kind of attention should have a blog. Whether it's your personal brand or your business brand, a blog gives you so much value. But for a blog to really build an audience by itself is darn near impossible. It's an uphill battle. Podcasting, however, it has an interesting dynamic, and I don't think people get that. Um, we're gonna get into the why, the how, the what of podcasting here shortly. But just as far as TWTT goes, a lot of time goes into that. Now, we try to condense it. We try to play with different things, like saying, oh well, maybe we could do a 1 hour show or an hour and a half. It's just not happening. Like, people want us to go deep. They keep saying, "Hey, go deeper. We love it. We love how deep you guys go." So that's the majority, and you can't please everybody. So we're gonna go towards the majority, because we enjoy going deep. In an hour format, you generally can't fit in enough quality, I feel, unless you have one topic and that's it. And if you have to have people that will stay on point, then you become scripted, and then, that's not very fun. I like when people speak from their heart. The other thing too is, it's a different dynamic when a podcast has a live component. So we do something unusual with most of our stuff on Geeky Answers, namely the exclusive show, the flagship shows. They're not one and the same, but they usually go hand in hand. So what we do is we stream on Twitch, sometimes Google Hangout, and then we export video to YouTube for people that missed the live show. And then we we either turn those videos into audio rips, or we have an audio recording as well. In Time Miami Tea Time, we do all of that, plus we're streaming to all games. So it's another audio pipeline another pipeline going out somewhere else into the ether of the internet, and we got to make sure the quality on that stream is good. So that's just during the show, all that stuff that I'm monitoring, making sure that it's, I'm perfecting, tweaking the quality as I go along. That's just that during the show. But before the show, we're testing, daily to make sure that everything's good. Show notes are polished. We checked our sources, to constantly checking the audio, because sometimes things change in your setup, especially if, you have one computer that's your podcasting rig, your gaming rig, your workstation, whatever, and, you do everything on one computer. Chances are something could go wrong. A driver could get corrupt. You could get some kind of internet hiccup. You never know. And also, internet by itself, your broad rate connection usually is an up and down kind of thing. So, one day you might test really well, and the next day it might suck. So we test daily, we prep daily for Time Miami Tea Time, because the audience is growing so rapidly. We want to make sure we really bring our A game, right? Then on the day of the show, I'm up sometimes 3 to 5 hours before the show, prepping some further. So it's funny to me, and I'm not being salty, but it's funny to me when someone says something like, "Please test your audio and check everything before you start recording," as if we're not doing that. It's like, you really have no idea how much work is involved. 2 hours, I would say, for the typical podcaster that really takes pride in the work. Not the people that just do the broadcast and the mindless banter. So that's good in its own. But for the serious podcasters that really see that it's a powerful platform and they have a sense of responsibility to the audience, every 2 hours of actual content that they produce, or let's put it better like this, because a 2 hour audio podcast might be actually 3 hours of content trimmed down when it actually goes to the feeds, right? So for every hour of content that you hear on the audio podcast or comes out through the RSS feed through, iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, Spreaker, Zune, all that stuff, for every 1 hour you hear as the listener on a traditional podcast platform, you're probably looking at about, I would say, I'm gonna be modest because I don't want to say what I do, But for the average person, probably half hour to an hour of extra work before and after the show. I would say for some of us, you're looking at, an hour and a half per each hour produced. So you're saying that if you get 2 hours of recorded content on the point without having to do additional takes or anything, you know, and that's if you're not live. If it's live, it's even more, right? But we're being modest. We're sending some baseline numbers. So an hour worth of audio content for your podcast, you're looking at, 1 to 2 hours worth of work minimum. So a 2 hour podcast, which seems to be the magic number everywhere, because attentions are very short these days. A 2 hour show is a 6 hour plus production, and you're looking at a total of 8 hours committed each week if it's weekly. So I understand that, now we see some bi-weekly productions. For some people, a monthly production might be more sustainable because it is a lot of work. For us, we decided to stick with weekly because we're getting such tremendous response. Originally, it wasn't going to be a weekly thing. It was going to be kind of bi-weekly or whenever we felt like it. But then we saw a demand, and people were like, "We really like this. Keep it coming." And folks when we did the pilot and we took like a week and a half off, people were like, "What, did you guys go on holiday? What's going on?" Even though we set the expectation, it wasn't going to be a weekly thing because we wanted to do something that was sustainable. We didn't want to set the bar really high and then fall off. But now the momentum's just there, and we're passionate about it. The community's passionate about it, and we can't stop now. We're trying to find ways to squeeze in bonus episodes so we can get certain guests on, like Matt Bradford, who can only make it like Wednesdays and Thursday nights. So we get that. So it's a lot more work than people realize. It's not like you just show up with and round up your guests or your co-hosts and then hit record. And then it magically pollinates itself. This editing. You got to do if you really take pride in your work, you're gonna probably do some noise removal, some compression, and slash normalization. You might do some post production bumpers and music thrown into the mix. Some people do background music. For some people that could work. There's so much involved. So, I just want people to appreciate that. If you're not a podcaster, but you like podcasts, or maybe you never even thought about podcasts, I want people to appreciate just how special of a medium it is, the podcast, or just the audio show. And there's also video podcasts. Podcast is a very generic term. All it is a show that could come in video or audio only, and it's small enough that you could download a bunch of the episodes or installments back to back. Podcasting just kind of got coined by Apple and whatever and their supporters. But that's the concept. It's a small enough bite-sized content that you could download without like destroying your storage device. So that's a little different from like a Twitch thing because if you're doing, for example, we do the video. If you're doing 1080, with a high bit rate like 30 frames per second, and for whatever reason you're doing a 48 kilohertz sample rate, and 90 something it's higher than 96K quality, which is beyond CD audio quality. That's insane. You're talking about 2 hours worth of data becoming like a 2 gig file or more. Unnecessary. It's actually going to be a lot more than that. So I usually just do 480 or 720. And if we're not doing webcam video, I lower the bit rate and the frames per second. No point to have that fluidity, as long as the audio quality is there. Like right now, I'm doing the slideshow. I'm also doing the webcam, but I wouldn't do make it super high bit rate just to make it a bigger file for the end user. So because you have to think about it, even if they're not downloading it, streaming, if you have a big file to stream from, you're basically setting people up to fail, because if they don't have very good connections, they're gonna get a lot of choppiness, a lot of breaks in the audio. So that, that's stuff to be mindful of. So let's transition into, podcasting, strategies as a whole, and think about this. If you're a podcaster, you're thinking about doing podcasting, or you're just getting started, wherever you're at. Hey, you might be a veteran. What is your strategy really? What's your end game? So before you even think about strategy, what's your end game? If you're honestly just doing it as a labor of love, all right? I mean, you have to be honest with yourself. If you're honestly doing it as a labor of love, cool. But I'm gonna say something. A lot of folks don't honestly do it as a labor of love, because they start worrying about all the comments and how many people call in and leave voicemail messages, how many views they get on YouTube. I don't know. What else do people think about? How many subscribers they have, how many average downloads they get each week. All this stuff. You start looking at the metrics, you start looking at the numbers, and eventually you start, you get to a point where it's like, wow, I'm 50 episodes in, and I'm enjoying it, but at the same time, I don't see the value in it. Or something else comes up that's making you money, or that's more pressing, and you start putting less effort into the podcasting, and it suffers. And here's the thing: the more you do it, the more you inevitably will create an audience. You gotta really just do minimal to, or maybe no effort with your podcast to not build some sort of audience. And after a while, you do have a responsibility to those folks to deliver a certain standard of quality and be consistent. And consistent could be a dirty word to some people. So when I talk about consistency, I mean with the quality standards that you've made your audience accustomed to, and with the frequency. So how often are you getting the shows out? Like right now, one of the oldest video game shows that have been out, the Video Game Outsiders, they're kind of slapping their audience in the face, because they've unofficially got to like a bi-weekly schedule, but they haven't said that. So it's like, oh, this week there'll be no VGO. That's sad. They have a brand that they've built up for over 8 years now, and they're kind of saying, yeah, we know we have a dedicated audience, but sorry, we're gonna do this whenever we feel like it, and that's kind of piss poor. I would say if life happens, at least do a quick show, and honestly, for most people, it might be worth just doing a half-hour show or an hour-long show. I'm still very doubtful that you could do a lot of quality in half hour. 45 minutes, I've seen some quality shows. Um, you know, but even then, like I feel like it's very restrictive to just do such a short show, especially if you involve your audience in some way, or you want to have room to discuss and really reflect upon things. Now, if you're purely scripted and you're like, "Hi, welcome, this is so and so show, and today we're gonna be discussing blah blah." Oh, and then we got this at point X, point Y. Computing done. All right, we'll see you next week. That's some people might like that. I don't. I like to hear that people are having fun. I like to hear that. Like to hear that inflection, that passion, and I like when people keep it fresh. But it's funny because there is a problem in podcasting with banter that's just pointless, and then there's good banter. There's this whole thing about broadcast. A lot of people say that most podcasts are just pointless broadcasts, and that's another thing. All right, so before you can think about your podcasting strategy, all right, well, another thing you have to be honest about with yourself is, are you doing the podcast just as an excuse to catch up with friends? There's nothing wrong with that, but if that's really what you're doing at the end of the day, that's probably something you want to include in your messaging, in your marketing, so people have that expectation set. It's like, hey, we're just a bunch of friends getting together to catch up about what we did during the week, the video games we played, and the foods that we're eating. Whatever your shtick is, that's cool. But that's the number one thing when you think about strategy, is managing expectations. And managing expectations means you manage your own expectation. your own expectations, and you manage the expectations of your target audience. So, before you can understand anyone else, you have to understand yourself. Like, what you have to be honest with yourself. This is what I want. I want to be able to attract sponsors. All right, what would your sponsors be looking for really before they pay you up front or pay you per endorsement, whatever your deal is. Oh, I want to have enough traffic to be successful with ads. Okay, that's a lot of traffic. How are you gonna get there? You have to temper those expectations. You might set expectations to begin with, and then realize, all right, I'm nowhere near this. And this is why you do the pilot episodes, and you really got to commit to doing at least 10 episodes consistently, and then after that, see what kind of results you get. And I really urge people, when you start off in any project, any startup, any business endeavor, you don't want to go crazy with the marketing stuff, the promotional stuff, the advertising. As far as holistically marketing, you want to think about strategies, plan things ahead. You have structure to your stuff. Think about your target audience. Absolutely, what kind of voice and tone you want to have. Because that's important. Is it going to be a family-friendly show? Is it going to be PG? Is it going to be explicit? And then from there, all right. So on one side, you can have freedom of expression, but then on the other side, well, you won't be able to be picked up by radio networks because those things still exist, or more traditional channels. Like if you want to be picked up by like iHeartRadio, which is owned by Clear Channel, last I checked, they're pretty conservative. You're not gonna get away with the F-bomb. You may not even get away with the B word, and certainly not racial slurs, even if it's just joking around and not that powerful. If any racist content, you're gonna get denied. So you got to think about it. I mean, you should be doing that anyway, as far as I'm concerned. But there's so many things to think about. So you think about a potential reach, and the work involved. Don't go crazy with the marketing. I tell people all the time, it's like they go nuts. It's like, oh, I got an extra $500 I'm gonna spend it in Facebook ads. That's great. Facebook ads have their place, but here's the thing. All right, so you build up this Facebook audience. What are you gonna do to keep them engaged, and can you sustain that effort? Okay, I'm gonna tell you right now, Facebook's #1 goal is to keep people on Facebook. If you think that those Facebook fan page, all those fans on your Facebook fan page are gonna convert to people that'll go to your website or click on links to do other stuff, good luck. You'll be lucky if you get likes and comments on Facebook itself, and that's tough. So if you want to convert beyond the Facebook ecosystem, it's tough. It's a very self-contained community, and a lot of social media platforms, a lot of social networks in particular, are like that. You might get really great engagement on Twitter, but when you convert it to your Twitch channel or your podcast or whatever, this is the kind of things you have to think about. And ultimately, you want to have a common funnel, something that you could drive people towards, and nurture them within that system. Because if you're relying on Twitter, Facebook, Google Plus, stumble upon Reddit to do that work for you, that's a dangerous place to be, because you're subject to their terms of usage and their restrictions, And the thing is, people ultimately will stay within their platforms of choice, within their ecosystem of choice, their networks of choice, and that's where they're comfortable. They may not go from there, but you might be able to get influence from them and support from them to get people to come where you want them to be. So again, when you start off with podcasting, this might be your first podcast or you're just getting started. You have to really think about what's sustainable. The reason you want to start off slow as well is because it's hard to sense growth when you come, guns blazing right through the gate. So when you do I don't want to say you do the bare minimum, but when you do a healthy amount of promotional stuff, you post on Facebook, tag a few friends, tweet out when you do the show, tweet out when you upload the show, maybe tweet out to ask people to leave reviews, whatever you do, you say, all right, I could easily just dedicate 15 minutes a day to send out some tweets and get a blog post up or whatever, quick heads up on Tumblr. Cool. and that's manageable. So or you might say I'll commit 2 hours each week, um, to do promotions and spread some buzz. Whatever is sustainable for you, and you also have to think about, you know, don't look at how much free time you have now. Anticipate that something's gonna come up that's gonna dig you into your time. A lot of people do not think about that. Um, and also delegate, but also realize that people can be fickle. Are those people that you have on the show today fully vested in in the experience, or is this something for them to do? It might just be something for you to do. Whatever bar you set, that's the maximum you could probably expect from people that partner up with you. There are exceptions, like Stan on TWTT. He goes above and beyond with some of the promotional stuff, and me, I look more at the more quality stuff, and I say, all right, that's not worth my time right now. I got a lot of things on the plate, and if I start doing this busy work, it's gonna take me away from something that I see as higher value right now. It's not to be dismissive of what he does, but as a family man and managing the network and being involved in so many other things, I have to really kind of draw a line in the sand and say, all right, this is as much as I'm gonna do. This is as much as I can handle consistently. And then when I have the free time, I do some extra value-added stuff. But again, you have to think about what's sustainable. So I'm working on this blog post, and I pretty much have the structure and then the key points written down, if not in my head. Some of the things some of the questions I think you should really, think about, some considerations before you get started in podcasting, or if you're trying to really step things up. Who is your target audience? We talked about that. Mono or stereo, and just in the overall, your sound quality. There's a very big debate surrounding mono or stereo, and I don't think it's a cut and dry issue. Personally, if I listen to a podcast and I hear only one sound channel, that annoys the crap out of me. I usually have headphones. Even on speakers, if I only hear from one side, I'm like, especially if I have surround sound, that mono sound, I mean, you could duplex it, but it's something, stereo sound to me feels warmer, and it feels more like if I was there in the room with someone. On the flip side, there are people that only like the mono because they want to listen with one earbud in, or they don't want the sound to overpower them. But I think the issue is that people do not clean up the audio enough and balance it out to where it's even on both channels. So if you get really loud sound on one ear and then really low sound on the other ear, that sucks. So to me, I think it's more understanding audio engineering aspects, or having someone that could be dedicated to that, which, if you're just starting out or you're a smaller podcast, probably you don't have that. But, maybe have someone that's capable enough. And that's something you'll get better and better with. But, before you get started, if you're thinking to look for a change, thinking about the mono versus stereo thing is big. Mono audio, you could say theoretically you slash your podcast size in half. It's a bigger consideration when you're looking to move your content to another host. So I think if like space on the server, like Libsyn, Beam, these are expensive solutions for podcasting. Speakers too. They can get very expensive very quickly, especially if you have multiple shows. So in that case, I think your hand is forced. It makes the decision easy. But if storage is not a concern, then you have to think about the user experience, your audience's experience, what their preferences are, and at the end of the day, you might have to just think about what you really enjoy to listen to. I know I've heard Twitch streams and podcasts where it goes to mono, and I don't know, it doesn't sit right with me. It messes with my head, but that's just my personal opinion. I'm probably in the minority though. Again, we talked about the voice and tone. It's gonna be family friendly. It's gonna be a serious tone or more fun, and be somewhere in between. It's important. You got to think about the ratings and the platforms you'll be syndicating out or featured on, especially if you want to be picked up by a serious podcast network. Length of show, it's the old quantity versus quality thing. That doesn't mean that a long show can't be full of quality, but typically people just stretch out to 2 hours. because they like hearing themselves talk. I don't know, or whatever the reason is. Um, and then there's people that do short because they can't think of much to say. They don't have much value, and so just because you have a shorter show doesn't mean that it's a more quality show either. So that's something to think about. Did I just break something? Oh, I did break something. Bear with me, guys. My ADD's kicking in. I'm surprised no one's coming in for the live stream to share their thoughts, but that's fine. This is a vlog. It's not really meant to be vlog. I do see people tuning in actually. Why isn't it showing my counter? Well, hello everybody. I hope you're enjoying this behind the scenes look of at podcasting and social media. There's a lot of stuff to it, folks. There's a lot of stuff to it. Like I said, it's not just hitting the record and stop. And podcasting I would say is more challenging even than Twitch streaming in some ways. Because again, all people have to go on usually is the voice quality. Though if you do video, that's one way to deal with it. But it's a very different dynamic. With video, if you do YouTube or Twitch, it's more about just staying on the grind. And if you just do it consistently enough and you're interesting enough, inevitably you'll grow a large enough audience to make it sustainable. But you need a lot of free time for that. Podcasting, you need a lot of a plan. I feel you have to be a lot more deliberate in your efforts. There's no stumbling into success. Hey, well, good to have you, brother. But yeah, I know a lot of people are still at work right now, so they're multitasking. So some more questions to ask yourself with the podcasting stuff. How much work can you commit to weekly? We talked about that already. Will it be live or pre-recorded? And that would change the platforms and tools that you adhere to, that you use, that you employ. How will you promote it? And where is your target audience currently? You have to think about them. When you talk about target audience, all it really means is picture your ideal, your super fan, your first super fan. What kind of stuff do they like? What do they look like? What do they eat? You want to get as specific as you want. It's not creating bias. It's not being, racist or sexist or whatever. But think about what your preferred fan is. Like if you had a super fan that you'd be super proud of having, excited about, what does he or she look like? Support it. Because it says a lot about what your expectations are, who you are as a creative person, as a geek. And then you can mold that into a special kind of messaging. And it'll make your efforts thereof a lot more authentic, deliberate, and, engaging. Oh, I'm getting a call here. But, anywho, I'll get it later. So that's a very important thing. Marketing doesn't really excite a lot of people, but you got to think about that stuff to some degree. Now, another question here is a big one. How will you convert from those platforms to your own funnel? And we talked about that already. Or does it matter? Maybe you might have a Facebook page and a Tumblr. That's usually a low initial cost. And you can just let them do their own thing and hope that it naturally gets some attention. Yeah, sure. Tumblr gets a lot of search juice, and it's really good with handling tags. Facebook works well for people that are already in Facebook a lot of the time, but there's more and more people that are not using Facebook. Either deleting their accounts or they barely use it because they're tired of getting spammed. Especially with all the friends sending you invites for Pet Saga and freaking Diamond Dash or Candy Crush or whatever. Breathe. Okay. You could block those, but still. And also finally, there's a lot more questions we could ask you, but what are your goals? What is sustainable, and what's your end game? So that's kind of what we're talking about here. I don't want to go too much longer because there will be a blog post coming out for this, but you got to think about. I look at 4 key areas that you're constantly going to cycle through. All right, you got your pre-production, which includes your preparation, outreach, and testing. During the show, you got your efforts to minimize dead air and banter. And also you got your chat. You could throw in your chat if you have a live thing. But mainly, for most people, your live show, you mainly think about how to keep things flowing. So minimizing that dead air, but also minimizing banter and just keeping the conversation going. Post production, you get your building and maintaining momentum, and of course, uploading the files and editing and all that stuff. Um, if you do a live show, if it's not pre-recorded, or even if it's pre-recorded, ideally you'd want to have a system set up so that you can get it right the first time around, and maybe not have so much of a self-imposed quality restrictions or standards that you're just a perfectionist and you're never happy with it. It's like take 20. You have to think about it. Unless you're doing a show solo, you have to value your co-host time and guest time. So you want it to be able. I try to do every show in one take. So I just roll with it. That makes some shows less quality than others, arguably, but I think there's been a consistent quality. I can actually re-listen to most podcasts that I do over and over again and still enjoy them and catch different things that I didn't catch before, whether for better or worse, but usually it's a good experience. That's important, and it's not because I love listening to myself, but I listen to our guests and I listen to my co-hosts, and I'm like, yeah, I enjoyed this. This was a really good episode. And if you get to that point, I think that's all that really matters. There'll always be things you'll want to improve, right? And a fourth area I like to look at is just the overall winning formula. Are you going for a niche? Are you going for production quality, consistency, or chemistry? A combination of those four things, those deliberate efforts within those four areas, I think that might be the winning formula. But no one really knows the secret sauce, because there isn't a secret sauce. There's no broad strokes. There's things that have worked for others that may not work for you. There are best practices, but even with that, a lot of the stuff is subjective, like the mono audio versus stereo. I can argue either way if I really want to. It comes to personal preferences. Like, I think the people that want mono audio are the people that have crappy speakers or headphones. Or, I don't know, they have very sensitive eardrums. Or the people that don't have very good bandwidth, and that's understandable, because it's a smaller file when you do the mono. But I am trying to wrap this up because I'm actually getting very hungry, and it's almost time to eat. We got some messages here in the chats. Alright. Awesome. King Deem, he's one of our newest contributors in the gang. He's working on an article talking about whether Doctor Who is a proper kids show, and I put parentheses still. Is it still a proper kids show? Something we've been talking about a lot on Time Might Be Tea Time. So, food for thought. Now, what else do we want to discuss today? I feel like I'm forgetting something. No, I think we covered everything there. But so yeah, people still use mono. It's a big thing in podcasting, man. I think a big part of it might be because there's still a lot of people that use mobile devices without headphones, so those speakers are usually mono speakers. It's one driver technically, so if you get stereo audio going through it, it sounds terrible. But again, if I'm listening to a podcast, if I'm listening on a phone, an MP3 player, on my computer, to music or podcasts, usually I'm gonna have headphones on. If anyone's going through the built-in speakers on their TV or mobile devices, whether it's a tablet or phone, that strikes me very strange, because those are never good quality. So yeah, it seems weird to me too, but that's what people do. Yeah, and it's a big cause for debate. You have people that one of my bestest podcasting buddies. I like to consider him a friend. We'll probably become official friends once we meet each other at Walker Stalker Con. But I consider him a friend because he's got a good heart. I feel a good spirit from him. But Sean Freeman from Zombie Cast and the Knuckleballer Radio on All Games, by the way, on Sundays and Mondays. You can check out the schedule on allgames.com. He went off on a rant about it, a bit of a tirade, if you will, and posted on Facebook like, guys, you got to do mono. the stereo, I can't take anymore. I'm gonna stop listening to your shows if you don't do mono. Well, okay, I'm sorry, bro. I'll miss you. I just don't see how mono could be that much better for some people unless you have a very crappy listening setup. I don't know. There's just something like I have trouble. Well, usually my hearing, right? And sometimes one ear will hear better. Actually, one ear can hear better than the other all the time, but sometimes it's even worse. Like I usually hear better from my right ear, unless I got sinus congestion. So if I do mono and I happen to have headphones reversed or some weird kind of anomaly, it messes with my psyche. And I'm not the only one that has that kind of issue. But you know, yeah, everybody has opinions, everybody has preferences, and it's like rainbows. You know, there's a full spectrum. Yay. So what else? You know, if you're interested in podcasting, I think it's very interesting. Like as much as I'm excited about Twitch, and I know that everything's going towards video and more so bite-sized content. You know, Vines are popular, and it tells just one simple thing: people have very short attention spans. And I think eventually I will be doing like a 45-minute show, with like, you know, quick episodes here and there, because I know people, they just don't have patience anymore. You know, Vines has really set the bar low, or has it set it high? It set the bar high, because now it's something we have to overcome, because now it's like 6-second content. That's about as far as people really pay attention. But I think podcasts will still have a place, because you could do radio drama, you could do readings, right? People don't. What's tough now for people to really get into is reading a blog, reading a book. That's a scary place to be, and it's scary as a writer, and a journalist. You know, people don't like to read, so now everything's moving towards audio and video. And I think podcasts are in a special place, because on one side you don't have to worry about video usually, not because video comes up with a whole other slew of considerations. You have to have additional bandwidth. You have to render the scenes consistently. You have to tinker with different settings: your CBR, your CFR, your CRF, your X encoder settings, and you know, decide if you're gonna do AAC or MP3 encoding for the audio, and you gotta make sure that syncs up. So much stuff to think about. And then if you're doing the webcam video, or you have other video sources to overlay together or mix down together, it's like you have to set up a video overlay. You know, it could be crazy. PFT says, I have a VCR that only does mono. Switch to mono so I can tape it better. And it's a moot point too. If your left and right audio channels, you know, for stereo are balanced, then the mono rip will be perfect. But I digress. You know, I completely lost my train of thought. BFT got me good. That's funny. So yeah, I mean, you know, you really got to think about it. You know, again, I think podcasting is in a special place, because it's in some ways it's growing, but in other ways it's not. Like I feel like there's so much more they could do right now with podcasting to make it more relevant to people, because I don't think people are doing podcasting the way it used to be. Like I don't think there's a lot of people getting their iPod or their iPhone and downloading the podcast episodes. I think there's more people streaming them or downloading them to the computer, and there would be more doing that to the computer if there were platforms that really understood the value of podcasting, but weren't maybe necessarily dedicated to podcasting. Like imagine if Facebook had support for podcasts, embedding podcasts, or setting up pseudo stations. There could be some power there, and that can make Facebook more relevant, because Facebook is losing traction themselves. Yeah, think about that kind of stuff. It's nice. What's nice about podcasting is less competition, because there's a higher barrier to entry. Again, it's not as easy as people think. You don't just click record and then it magically does everything else you needed to do. There's so many things to think about, right? But you know, blogging is so easy for everybody to get to. Everybody can start a blog. Go to WordPress.com, go to Blogspot, LiveJournal, Typepad, whatever, and then just sign up for free. Okay, I have a blog. I'm a blogger now. You know, podcasting, you got to think about a lot of stuff. All right, this is what we want to talk about. What makes it special? Because is it really worth it to talk about it if we don't have a fresh perspective or some kind of niche, a different take on it? All right, and what are we gonna name ourselves? Are there other podcasts with this name? Okay, yeah, that matters. Um, you definitely don't want a brand name mix up with when you do your podcast. And the blog, you can probably get away with it because it's a different kind of beast. Most people are gonna come find your blog through other keywords and topics, not the name of your blog. But with as you spread the name to people, you tell people, at parties or social events or whatever, of other sorts, conventions, you say, hey, check out my blog. It's Time Wimey Tea Time or Horseplay Live or three guys talking about nonsense. And they look it up and then they find a bunch of other podcasts because they have similar names, but they come up first because they might have a higher audience. You have to think about that. You have to think about a unique name. What's in the name? What does the name communicate? Your spirit, the essence of your podcast. Then you can think about the tagline, the slogan. A lot of platforms will support that. You want a long description and then a short description. Because different podcast platforms, they encapsulate the data differently. They use metadata differently. So FeedBurner right now, that's a big thing. FeedBurner is one of the best, if not the best, solution for RSS syndication on podcasts, and it's important because it allows you to make your feed, your podcast feed, compatible with every podcasting platform out there, and it knows how to handle video, audio, mixed media, and all the different metadata in there. So iTunes will accept it, so Stitcher will accept it and whatnot. But there's word that Google might be shutting down FeedBurner. Then what happens? So there's a lot of considerations with podcasting, and I would say more so than there is with video even. With video there might be more post production stuff. So there's stuff to think about there. But I think that's all those barriers to entry with podcasting. The fact that it's something that takes a lot of planning, a lot of deliberate effort, real strategizing, and some technical know-how. I would say extensive technical know-how. That makes the barrier to entry low, and it makes it easier for you to carve out your own niche. I think it's still at a place. The industry is still in a place where it's ripe for the taking, which is interesting because when you see panels at conventions talking about the state of podcasting, they say there's not much money in there. The growth is limited, awareness is limited. That's because people, again, they haven't tempered their expectations, and they didn't have a plan early on. So when they finally get to that point where they say we really need to start raising money to pay for the costs and sustain the growth, blah blah blah, then by then it's already too late because they have to change so much that they kind of undo all the work they did beforehand. And they've also developed a certain kind of expectation with the audience. The audience will be spoiled. It's like, wait, now you're trying to advertise and sell stuff, so we're gone. So stuff like that happens. But eventually, everyone has to monetize. You need some kind of revenue stream or some bigger incentive to keep going with those kind of projects, especially podcasting. And I think there's lots of solutions on there, but people just don't get it. Like maybe the direct monetization of podcasting may not really be there. So there are services for like adding a pre-roll your podcast so you can have those advertisements and consistently put in there. But besides that, that's besides the point. But at the very least, you could grow your audience and then bring them to your ecosystem, your website or your SoundCloud or your book portal where you sell your ebooks or your hardcover, you actually published physical books, or your video game site where you share your mobile games or whatever you do. There's so many ways to drive next steps and nurture leads so that fans become friends or super fans or brand ambassadors or lifetime fans, loyalists, whatever you want to call them, brand loyalists. All that stuff right there. But wow, I started almost an hour long here with this vlog. I'm gonna head out of here. Gotta feed the pets, feed myself. My stomach is gurgling. I hope that you got something from this more more how-to oriented um, vlog. And like I said, I will be following this up with a blog post on geekyantics.net. And for those that are interested in podcasting, maybe you want to be a guest at a podcast or start your own podcast. I hope this gives you a great appreciation of what is going on and how much potential there is with it. I think it's a very special medium. I love podcasting. You know, I enjoy the video, but there's something special about just podcasting itself. You know, especially when you get to hear the audio podcast coming through iTunes and Stitcher, and it's like, wow, I did that. That's pretty cool. That's actually pretty professional. I'm impressed. Woohoo! Pat yourself on the back. You know, it's a special kind of magic that I don't think a certain kind of satisfaction you don't even get with YouTube and Twitch most of the time, unless you're one of the few fortunate that made it big on those things. I think there's still opportunity in podcasting, so I hope this encourages you. I don't mean to overwhelm you. I don't want people to overthink it and have that paralyze them with fear and preventing them from doing more. But you know, there's stuff to consider, and you know, that's part of the fun. You know, really laying down those plans, the blueprints, and saying, "Hey, I did this, or we did this together." It's pretty awesome. So, guys, stay tuned. There will be fundraising. We'll be having product reviews, banners, Amazon referral links, all sorts of stuff. Because you know, it's something I have to think about now for myself and for the network. But immediately, I am trying to get Bloo back to 100% health, and I can't do it without your help. So, just a quick shout out. Shout out to BFT and an anonymous donator that they donated recently. They were the last people to donate, and appreciate that big time. So, words can never, you know, express my full gratitude, but I love you guys. And it's cool because you guys can see the comments. I'll be streaming a lot more this week, hopefully, if all goes well, and getting caught up on my channel, twitch.tv/YogiZilla, doing lots of different games, and just trying to fundraise through the Twitch. I also have a ton of stuff lined up for geekyantics.net, so it's gonna be a very busy week. I don't know how I'm gonna do everything, because then, you know, family and things on the home front. Woo! We'll figure it out. But thanks so much for tuning in. This has been the Gang Minute, not the Geektastic vlog. That's on Sundays. And my name is YogiZilla, aka Yomar Lopez. On behalf of the Geeky Antics Network Global, the gang, at geekyantics.net. Appreciate you, love you. Stay geeky, stay nerdy, keep it real. Game on. Peace out.